Well, considering that we are here for the Sharks Global Partner Summit in Lake Tahoe, and considering that I am with Shark Voice, although I want to call you Shark Face.
Thank you.
You're more the face of the franchise, I feel like, than anything else. This is a state of the Sharks conversation. This is not tank talk. We're going deeper level perspective with Randy Hahn. And I just want to start like this. Considering where the last 5 years have brought us, I think we can all realize how spoiled we were for most of the 2010s. You agree?
I agree. Even before that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think the very beginnings of the franchise, those first 2 years starting in 91 at the Cow Palace, and when the Sharks were this kind of novelty, and the promise of coming to San Jose when the arena opened was there, but no one really knew how that was going to unfold. And then unbelievably in that first year, in San Jose, they qualified for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and Jamie Baker scores the big goal and they beat Detroit. And really from that moment, there were some lulls in between. Then there was the great run that you suggested where I think it was 17 out of 20 years the Sharks made the playoffs. There was not a lot of pain. I guess the only pain was
the playoffs and how they would go.
The pain of not winning at all.
Right. You mentioned Bakes, and I will speak their names. Brett Hedican, Jamie Baker. I mean, they're in this conversation too. We were so lucky to have worked with people like that.
Yeah.
Them being established, I do want to say that now that Drew is back full time, we missed Drew. And it's great for you to be back with Drew. You know what I'm saying? It's a hard conversation because we love everybody.
Sure.
But man, this has been fun to see you guys on a full-time basis back together.
Well, yeah, and first and foremost, I'm glad Drew's back, that the Sharks brought Drew back.
Yeah.
Not because there was anything wrong with the outstanding work that Jamie and Brett did.
Right.
But I just mean, when Drew left, it was in unusual circumstances.
It could have been the end of Drew with the Sharks. Done.
And that's usually how it happens.
Right.
And for the organization to, if you wanted to say let bygones be bygones, or for whatever reasons there was friction before, to get past that and to bring him back, it's been number one wonderful for me because he's such a great fit for what I do, and I think we kind of built a lasting chemistry together for the 13 years we were together before he left.
Yeah.
And it's great for Drew because he loves what he does, and he loves the direct contact to the Shark fan base and people who remind him that they go back to the Cow Palace days because he was there that first year as well, and mostly for the viewers. I mean, people. Drew draws eyeballs, and not many broadcasters do. I don't feel like I do, but when Drew is on camera, people go, that's the Sharks guy, that's the hockey guy. I can't tell you how many people call me Drew because they just go like, that's the TV guy, it must be Drew.
Randy, that's actually a chirp, by the way, when they call you Drew. That's not supposed to be meant in a good way.
Not at all.
One more thing on Drew. Grandpa Drew's a little bit different than Drew of even 15 years ago. He has settled down a little bit more.
He has.
We all have, but he especially
that's
has.
Natural, but he is, oh my goodness, does he have the grandparent gene?
I saw him FaceTiming his grandkids the other day, and I was like, who is this guy? But in a great, loving way.
No, it's
awesome.
Wonderful, and I just wish fans who perceive Drew in one way would be able to peek behind that curtain when he's FaceTiming with his granddaughter back in Canada. It's really special, and the warmth and the good-heartedness of Drew that doesn't always show itself on a broadcast, understandably, really comes out and completes him.
So you were around when the Sharks made their first ever draft pick. It was Pat Falloon. He was actually picked second overall. They didn't get to even have the first pick back then. So Pat Falloon is just like Macklin Celebrini, right? In the first overall pick. I mean, I'm kidding. We've never seen anything like what Macklin is already doing, have we? And you've seen a lot of draft picks. You've seen all the draft picks.
I mean, there's been some terrific number ones overall.
Of course.
Like most recently, what Connor Bedard did last year.
Of course.
He won the Rookie of the Year, and he had a phenomenal season for the Chicago Blackhawks, and we're in the middle of seeing Macklin have that. But just specific to the Sharks.
Right.
And this ends up being a byproduct of being good for so many years.
Right.
The Sharks were never drafting high.
Right.
And they were never able to trade up to get the crown jewel, if you will, the Connor McDavid, the Jack Eichel,
Right.
the generational
Missed out
talent
on all
like
that, yeah.
Crosby or Ovechkin in those years when they were drafted. The Sharks were never positioned, and they had to find other ways to find players in the draft. I mean, obviously Patrick Marleau, number 2 overall.
Yeah.
Then they end up trading for the only other number 1 overall they
jumbo.
had, Joe Thornton, which
Right.
one of the greatest trades in franchise history by Doug Wilson. I mean, are you telling me, you talk about a trade that transformed the franchise for the next 15 years? I mean, that trade to acquire Joe Thornton did that.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now is that kid, that 18-year-old, and you know, I say kid because I'm older, but he's a kid. He's
definitely a kid.
He's mature for his age.
I could be his dad, Randy.
His
Dad
his dad is a kid to me. But he's a young man. Will Smith too.
Yeah.
But specific to Macklin, he's 18 years old. He's been in a series of going through things for the first time, but just for 1 year, and being so good that he moved on. Junior Sharks for 1 year, moved on. USHL 1 year, moved on.
Right.
You know, BU 1 year, wins the Hobie Baker, moved on. Now he's the NHL, first year, boom, he's dominating some nights, and all still at the age of 18. So it's something we haven't seen before. It's very exciting. It's new. It's, you know, it gives all of us hope. But those of us who've been around the game long enough know, and we were talking about this with some of our partners at this retreat earlier today. In hockey, you can have one great player, but that doesn't win you a championship.
That's right.
Wayne Gretzky only won the Stanley Cup in one city.
Yeah.
And he played in St. Louis, Los Angeles, and New York, and he never won a cup in those places. And he was the best player in the world for most of those years with all those teams after he left Edmonton. But it takes more than one. So it's a unique sport in that way, in that one player, as superstar as he may seem, alone isn't enough. Needs to be surrounded by others, a supporting cast, which the Sharks had. We had Joe Thornton, who was clearly the superstar, but then we had Nabokov.
Yep.
We had Boyle/Burns. We had Pavelski.
Danny
we had
Heatley for a
Marlowe.
while.
We had Heatley.
Yeah.
We had great role players along the way through those years, whether it was a Ricci in the early years or a you know, pick a name.
You were not going to mention Curtis Brown's name there.
Or a Curtis Brown.
No, we didn't need to do that.
But you know, this is different. We're watching it all build up in front of us, and as I've been saying this to fans who may have drifted away,
Wavered, yeah.
and I understand it. You know, the team performance hasn't been good. It's not. Whether you're spending your time to watch it on TV and consume it that way, or spending your dollars to go to the games, you have decisions to make.
Yeah.
And if the product isn't up to your muster, then you're going to make the decision not to participate. I get that.
Yeah.
But I've been telling people, if you love it still in your heart or want to find out more about it, there is no better time to climb back on board. And there's lots of room on the bandwagon right now. This is the time, because now you find out from the very beginning where this journey is going to take us, and it never ends up being linear. We wish it would. That way we could say, you know, 2 years from this April, the Sharks will be back in the playoffs. We don't know that. It could be 1 year. It could be 5. We don't know that because it isn't linear.
I want to say, I hope that, like, I think it was the first interview with Macklin Celebrini after he was drafted. I hope someday, like when he's in the Hall of Fame, to say, oh, I was the guy that did his first ever interview. We know kind of where it's probably all going to end up, but to your point, the timeline is the fascination. I hope you don't mind me getting a little bit personal, but you lost your mom this season, earlier this year. You called a game the next day, the next night. Randy, how did you do that? How did you go through that?
You know, it's interesting. And I don't know what this says about me, or maybe us as human beings, but my mother passed at 97.
Good life.
A great life.
Yeah.
Like, where do I sign up to live to 97?
I would take that.
I'm all in.
I would take that.
But in honesty, the last several years of her life, and particularly the last year of her life, the quality of life was not good. And but those were decisions she had made when she had her wishes. So it ended the way it ended, her quality of life deteriorating. So there was an expectation that a finality was coming. There was notice. We knew, and maybe for a whole year you're waiting for that phone call. My sister lived with her in Canada.
You had just visited her.
Yeah, I had seen her a couple months before that.
Yeah.
She was unable to travel, of course.
Yeah.
And but there was that expectation that it was coming.
Yeah.
Flip side, we lost our pet last week, a long-time dog of 10 years, and that came unexpectedly. And and I had a game the next night. The shock of that, you talked to my coworkers that night, and I know that doesn't sound right. Wait, your mother and your dog?
I know.
But one was expected, the other wasn't. They both play various roles in your life. Obviously, your mother, much more prominent role than a pet. But they're as upsetting.
Yes.
And if you're a pet lover, you will understand that, and if you're not, you'll probably think I'm crazy. But it was my reality going through that. But I think being in the hockey culture where we see how players are able to block out injury, block out circumstance, and go to the task at hand. It was almost good that I had to do a game.
Healing, maybe?
Yes. I don't know if it's healing or at least it's coping.
Yeah, right.
And taking your mind off the tragedy of loss, of the feeling of loss in both those instances. So hockey's always been there, and I've been very fortunate. I know Sharks fans who have been viewers for a long time can maybe remember the nights when I shouldn't have worked because my voice was so bad.
There was just one.
Because I was sick. But my son Michael turns 30 on February 17th, and February 17th of 1995, when he was born, in around that day, either before or after it, was the last time I missed a Sharks game. So I've gone 30 years in a row without missing a game.
I was in high school, Randy.
And you know what they say about success at work, kids? Showing up is 90% of the job. So I've shown up.
Thank you for getting personal with me there for a second. What do you think happens these days at the Thornton and Marlowe houses with Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini, respectively, basically in a billet situation while they're in the NHL?
Yeah,
How do you think that goes?
I got to think that there's a level of craziness in both houses.
A lot of kids.
In the Marlowe family, you have, young boys that are into hockey. Their dad is probably going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame as the all-time games played leader, and they were old enough to enjoy the latter stages of Patty's career, and Will is he's got a great personality, and I'm sure that he's embracing the structure that Patrick and Christina, Patrick's wife, are providing for him. It's much more like the home life he was used to in Boston with his family, and he's gone through some billet-like situations in the past, but this has to feel more like home because of the home life that I know the Marlowes enjoy and had for their own sons, let alone somebody coming in. And at Joe's house, with Joe's personality and his fun-loving attitude, it's got to be. I would think Macklin is taken aback how somebody who's his father's age could be so much fun and more like him and more like because Joe's just recently stopped playing, but there's still so much player and youthfulness in Joe, maybe more than is in Macklin's dad, even though Joe and Macklin's dad are the same age. So I think he's got to be maybe surprised by that, but also enjoying it. I'm sure that it's going to end up being a great experience for both of them, and I love how it's part of what's become a Sharks tradition, going back to when Patrick Marleau, as a rookie, lived with our goaltender Kelly Rudy and his wife Donna, and that's now been passed along to a next generation of player, and that's what makes our league, our players, our families special within the pro sports communities, the willingness to do that and just take somebody in and say, you're living with us for the next year. We're going to put our arm around you and help guide you the way.
So should I expect the broadcaster invitation that I get to live at your house soon? I love your house, by the way.
Absolutely
I love the
not.
Sunsets.
Absolutely
I
not.
love the happy hours at the Hahn house.
Not even an overnight.
I don't know where to go next on this. Oh, I know. Another player that's impressed me in all of this, and we talk a lot about Will and Macklin, but Tyler Toffoli. I kind of knew what to expect, him joining the Sharks, but on the ice, the productivity's been great player. He was always a pain in the butt to play against. But I feel like the fact that he has embraced the big brother role with those two and all the other young players, I love that about him. Love that his wife is from Northern California. Like, he seems like a perfect fit. What have you seen from him behind the scenes?
What you're talking about.
Yeah.
He's a great pickup by my career, great signing. Here's a player who won a Stanley Cup with the LA Kings. So, check.
Right.
Not to say that winning a second one wouldn't be maybe the next check on his list.
But he's got that under his belt already. Yeah.
But then moved around to 5 teams over a period of years, and he was the trade deadline player flavor of the year over and over, and went from Montreal to Calgary to Vancouver and so on, and had played for 6 teams as he entered free agency this past summer, and I think was looking for stability for his wife Kat, who's from the Monterey Bay area, and for himself to settle in where they would have control over whether or not they were traded, and he got that.
4-year deal.
A 4-year contract, which gives them a chance to put down roots again, which they were able to do in LA at the front end of his career, and now as he's into that middle to latter stage of the career, he's able to do it again. And to your point, on the ice, like, you look at Tyler Toffoli over his career, and actually the last 2 years were his 2 highest scoring years in goals.
We talked about that recently.
Phenomenal.
He's like wine. He's getting better.
If you average out his year, he's a 30 goal scorer, which is a really valuable commodity in the NHL. It's like, this guy every year is going to get you 30 goals.
Right.
Well, you know what? I did the math the other day based on the scoring pace he's on right now, and if he keeps it up, he'll score 29.89 goals.
He's
something bizarre like that.
Yep.
So he's going to score 30 goals again. So the guys know that this is a guy who's going to score goals. He's going to score big goals, important goals in games. And he also has the experience. He's been through all of it, all the way, winning a Stanley Cup. His favorite coach ever is Daryl Sutter, who carries a reputation as being a hard knocks, old school kind of coach. I take exception to that because I think there were a lot of misperceptions about Daryl Sutter, but he thrived under that environment too. So he can counsel players when there's difficulties with the coaches and all that. He's seen them all.
Yeah, of course.
And won with the one who was perceived by many to be the toughest to play for. And I don't agree with that about Daryl. But he brings so many assets to the table, and the fact that in his own home life now, they have stability and they can make plans beyond a trade deadline as to where they're going to be the next year and so on and so on. And that's got to be such a great feeling for him and his family.
He feels like he was meant to be, honestly, with us, I think, when you look at it from the big picture. Last thing for you, we're going back to the personal side. More than 2,000 Sharks games called. Again, the Shark face, the Shark voice, whatever Randy is to you, he means a lot to all of us.
Again, I just showed up for work a lot of times in a row. It's not that big of a deal.
Well, that being said, like, at some point, I could see how, and I've said this to you before, you could just kind of mail it in some nights. You could not bring it, and maybe most of the audience doesn't even know because it's so ingrained in what you do. What keeps you motivated after all these years to prepare like you do, and I see it, and to make a hard game more fun than it actually is? What inspires you to keep doing this?
Well, I think as I've grown into this job now, 30 plus years into it, when you're young, you're excited about the travel and you get to go to all these other cities and you're around a team. And when I worked with the LA Kings, Gretzky was there, and it was like being with the Rolling Stones those early years because that's how big a mammoth trade that was. And when the Kings would show up in a city, there was media everywhere. And all those things are exciting early on in your career, but as you get deeper into it, you get used to the travel, and you've been to all the cities before, and you've been in all the arenas. Not that I don't still enjoy that, but for me, it's all about the game. And I still get to go to work in a place where there's maybe 17,000 people, and there's fathers and sons and mothers and daughters and boyfriends and girlfriends and husbands and wives and all the other combinations in between. They're there to have fun. They're there to have some food together, have some beverages together, cheer together, groan together, maybe be profane together, whatever happens that night. And it's the unpredictability of that party. Is it going to be just a ho-hum game? Are the Sharks going to play really well? Are they going to stink?
Is Timo going to score 5 in the game and like 4 in the first period?
I was just going to say, are you going to see something you've never seen before because you don't know?
Right.
Is it going to be run of the mill? And the balancing act for us, but that's what makes it special, is that there isn't a script. You've anchored many a program with a teleprompter in your career, and I've done some of that as well. But you've written it out, you're reading it into a lens, and it's all very structured and timed, and good night, everybody.
Yeah.
When we start, when that puck is dropped, we have an idea of some stories we want to tell, but if the whole game, if the vector of the game changes, we follow the game.
Right.
And our stories might not work anymore, no matter how much preparation we did for them. And that to me is that's where I get my juice. That's where my desire to keep coming back to the arena every game and be excited about it and be excited about getting ready for it is, along with obviously now, after this long being the Sharks voice, I'm completely unhireable by anybody else. Short of having the logo tattooed on me somewhere, which I do not.
Actually.
But it's that desire to see it come to the fruition of a Stanley Cup. And that's what we all want. We want to be back in that championship. And step by step, we want to be a contending team again, which hopefully is soon. We want to be a playoff team. Then we want to be a team to beat in the playoffs. And then we want to find a way to get this elusive championship that all of us who care about the Sharks want, and that keeps me going too. And I won't do this forever, but I'm still loving it and don't want to stop doing it at all. And but the clock is ticking, guys.
Don't say that.
Get to the cup. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, well, you know what? I'll say this.
The cup clock for me is ticking.
I'll close it out by saying this. It's on my bucket list, not just that the Sharks hoist the cup, but that I get to be at a parade with this guy.
That would be
a bucket list item for me. Let me close it out by reminding you, Randy, that icing on the power play, that's never good.
It's never good.